All right, so my name is Joe Scaramucci. I'm an investigator at the Sheriff's Office in Waco, Texas. For those that don't know Waco, Texas, we're home to Branch Davidians, Chip and Joanna Gaines, biker shootouts, and tons of shiplap. I'm going to break down kind of who I am, why I'm here, which what even got to the point that I'm even doing human trafficking. So a little bit about me. Been in law enforcement about 18 years. I've had a really, really blessed career. I got to spend, after my patrol time, about 7 years working homicide, sex crimes. So basically any which way a human being could die, I've probably seen it. And or, every kind of sexual abuse you could have, I was involved in some way, shape, or form. In addition to that, we have collateral duty. I spent 13 years on SWAT, both as entry and a SWAT sniper. I've been on aviation for the last 12 years, so I get to fly around and shoot out of helicopters and all the good stuff that goes with that. I don't know if you could tell there, I have a really, really good-looking teen English bulldog and a really ugly kid. I'm going to go home, embrace the dog, kick the kid, and make it a day. I also, as you can tell, probably based on the green shirt picture, I'm a bit of a smart aleck. It gets me landed in the wrong offices many, many times. Back in 2014, started investigating human trafficking. I did not know what I was doing. I can tell you that unequivocally. I had no clue what to do. I would look around and say, hey, how do we do human trafficking investigations? How many cops we got in a room? Few. If I said, hey, we're going to go do an operation today, we're going to recover trafficking victims, what are we going to do? We're going to get a hotel room, right? Probably 5 hotel rooms. We'll put some undercover cameras in there. We'll have the women show up. We'll text every number we can find till we can get them there. And they're going to come in the room, and we're going to do what? We're going to be like, hey, we are begging you to please tell me you have a trafficker, right? I am begging you. I have everything you need. I have been trained. I am trauma-informed. I am a vice squad with sensitivity training. I have pizza in the next room, and there are some wonderful ladies from the church that are going to talk to you if you can just tell me you're being trafficked, right? And when they say no, what happens with them? I watch a lot of news and and I know what goes on. They go to jail. So when they go to jail, what are we doing with our trafficking victims? We're re-victimizing them, right? We're taking people that have been really brought to the worst of the worst, and we're criminalizing them for being a victim of crime. Can anybody tell me what other crime in your Oklahoma Penal Code the victim goes to jail for? A single crime. There's not one. I mean, that's just the way it is. In addition to working at the Sheriff's Office, I also work for Homeland Security Investigations out of Austin. We cover about a 10,000 square mile area of responsibility. In addition to that, I've been very, very blessed. I have contracts with Department of Justice and DOD to train all DOD investigative units in CIS, Marine Corps CID, Army CID, all them, and to oversee federally funded task forces. So I get to work with many very large task forces on all of the problems they have, and it really has been unique because I can take a problem that's popping up in Tampa and say, hey, we've already dealt with this in Vegas. Let's get you guys together. Or, hey, I'm dealing with this problem in Baltimore. Hey, we were dealing with that a year and a half ago down in Houston. Let's get you guys together. I'm going to talk quite a bit about like a multidisciplinary team approach. I know you've heard from other people other than law enforcement, and then the question becomes, how can we marry that together, right? So in doing that, one of the things I want to talk about is what we're getting wrong in trafficking. So I want to tackle some statistics. I want to tackle some numbers. We're going to have time at the end to talk about it. Who here works for a non-governmental organization? Who here does human trafficking 101 training? Okay, you're going to hate me before we get done with this part. So what are our numbers doing? When we're looking at statistics in trafficking, are they helping us or are they hurting us? Who gets the numbers at the end of the day? When we start busting out the whole, hey, 1 in 6 children that are runaways are likely victims of human trafficking, who are we educating that to? Each other. Police officers, right? We do 101 training. Hey, that's what we're looking for. Prosecutors, ultimately, defense attorneys, judges, our victims, our traffickers. We're educating everybody around us on all of these things that we know to be human trafficking. Why do we know it to be human trafficking? Because it's cited by some organization. So let's do some fact checking. Let's talk about it. Anybody here know what human trafficking looks like? This is literally Google human trafficking, pull up images. This is what it looks like. Has anybody here personally not in a picture, personally seen a barcode tattoo on somebody's neck? I've yet to have, okay, a couple people in the back. So we're all looking for barcodes, right? Is that a common brand? It's not. What about, help me on anybody's hand? Any of the cops ever kick a door, walk in, whoop, sweep the room, and there's a woman there with shackles, and she's like, oh, sweet Jesus, I've been waiting this whole time, thank you? Of course not. Anybody else notice anything else different about these images of concern? They're all white girls, right? So when we look at studies that have been done, we can really deduce that trafficking disproportionately affects women of color, right? There's no question about it. But when we go to Google Images and all the things that you generally find at booths and stuff outside, what do we have? Blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girls, 12 to 14 years old, with "help me" written on their hands and shackles. So we look at how old our trafficking. Who here has heard average age of entry is 12 to 14 years old? Right? Trafficking 101, right? Is that an accurate number? Anybody know where that comes from? That actually comes from a report that was done. It's the commercial sexual exploitation of children in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So my question is this, is if we are getting an average age of entry of children, can that age ever be above the age of 18? If we're only pulling the average age of entry of children, can that number ever be above 18? Can't. If I'm only measuring 18 and under, I'll never get above 18, right? So what is the actual average age of entry? There's a couple different ways to look at this. There's a couple different studies. There's one that was done by Dr. Angela Henderson with the University of Northern Colorado. Hers was 19, of all the survivors she talked to, it was 19 was their average age. These are numbers to Polaris. So if you look at that, the average age of entry that's self-reported is 18 years old. That's not 12 to 14, it's 18. The problem is, the moment you turn 18 in one day, the law enforcement response looks different. You're now criminally responsible, right? And at the end of the day, let's be real, when we go out to donors and we say the average age of entry is 12 to 14, give me money so I can save these lives, or the average age of entry is 19, I need money to save those lives, who's giving money to 12 to 14 versus 19? I would, right? I'd be like, here, take my money. One thing to caution on this, it is self-reported numbers to Polaris. It's a small screenshot, but it is self-reported. Who's heard this? Average age of life, or average life expectancy of a woman in human trafficking is 8 years. You hear 7 or 8 years. Anybody heard that one? No? Nobody's heard that one? We talk about it all the time, right? It's human trafficking 101. You know where that number comes from? Literally came from an FBI white paper about 12 years ago, right? So some FBI agent did his thing. The citation is there on the right, so there's the actual citation for it. But this is what you find when you click it. It's no longer accessible. The FBI has now come out and said that was based off of a case we saw. One case, right? One singular case has now become this big thing in human trafficking. They now say, don't use this number anymore. It's not what we're seeing in this. But we go out and say it all the time, right? So my other question to this is, how would that even be measurable? I got friends that are in their 60s that are survivors. Are we gonna average them in? Like, how are we gonna do this? Who's heard that one? 1 in 6 runaways, right? 1 in 6 runaways is likely being trafficked. Let's go save all the runaways because 1 in 6 is being trafficked. That's literally what Nick Mick says about it now. So Nick Mick also says, and if anybody in here wants to receive a nasty email from their vice president, just quote this on LinkedIn. I promise you'll get the email. They now say it's not based on any empirical research. That number is not based on anything other than it's just something we see. So we're out pushing numbers about something we don't even have concrete information about. Problem lies with the fact that how many other numbers come of this. So there's another study that was done that said 800,000 children go missing every year. Some problems with that. How many times, because the cops are over here, you get runaway call at 123 Main Street. It's Susie Jones has done runaway for the how many times? 8 or 9, right? So if we go and we pull runaway reports for that year, how many runaways do we have on her alone? 9 missing kids, 10 missing kids. You got 1 missing kid who went away for a little bit of period of time. But when we take that and we say, well, 1 in 6 of those children is likely being trafficked, we then get to another widely used statistic. Well, between 100 and 150,000 juveniles are being trafficked at any time throughout the U.S. So we're taking a bad number, dividing it by a bad number, and getting a not good number. Okay, it doesn't get any better. So just something to think about. There's another conflicting study. It was actually done in Atlantic City, New Jersey. It was saying of the juveniles that were involved in commercial sex, 90% reported no trafficker. I also think that that's not a good one, because how many kids go, yeah, I'm a trafficker, his name's Dizzy Wizzle, he's out in the car waiting on me, right? Like, that's not happening. So we got to consider that as well. Again, just reiterate, that's where that number comes from. This is one that usually everybody starts throwing rocks at me. Who saw this? COVID-19 causes skyrocketing in child sexual abuse material. There's a big theory, human trafficking is going to skyrocket because of COVID. The problem is that every single year since the inception of NCMEC, cyber tips have risen. Every year. Some years at higher percentages than what happened during COVID. So what do we blame in the year 2012 for the higher rise? Like, we don't have that. So again, it's just one of those things just to start thinking about. When you're seeing a lot of this, question it. If you were actually going to look at cyber tips, in the United States, they decreased. But we like to talk about how big the increase is, right? We all like to see Tim Ballard in Operation Underground Railroad talking about how we're just going to go out and rescue all these people, right? It's not an accurate number. Who's to blame? Frankly, Zuckerberg is. When you look at the overwhelming majority of the tips, of like 21 million tips, old Zuck here is responsible for like 20.3 million of those. Why is that? Anybody got an idea? It's the world's largest internet platform, right? So they're pulling all kinds of algorithms. They've got all kinds of information. It's substantial what they're doing. I'm not saying that Facebook is perfect. I'm not saying that it doesn't have its issues, because it does. The overwhelming majority of recruiting still happens there, but we're seeing that. Anybody seen this one? 96% of trafficking victims in the U.S. are female. It's a pretty common one I've seen. Of that, 16% self-reported that they were male to Polaris, so that automatically screws that number up. Let's look at law enforcement response. Is law enforcement response going out looking for, are we doing operations, honestly, looking for trans victims? Nope. Are we doing any operations looking for male victims? Nope. What are we looking for? Blonde hair, blue eyed, 12 to 14-year-old white girls. That's what we're looking for. This is another one. I'm not really sure where this came from. There's an organization that cites this. It's kind of idiotic, and I just like throwing it up because it's that crazy. Every 2.5 hours, a child is taken into trafficking. That is inherently no research to back that up. It's not whatever. So if you see it, there's not even anything I can cite to even say this is nonsense. Who hears this? Foster care systems gateway to human trafficking. Let's be real. Who's DFPS? No DFPS in here. Okay. The foster care system is not a gateway to human trafficking. I hate to break the news to y'all. I could put 100 foster care youth in this room and say, raise your hand if you were trafficked. A few may raise their hand. I could put 100 trafficking victims in here and say, how many of you were in the foster care DFPS system? How many are going to raise their hand? Probably 98, right? The correlation doesn't equal causation. If that's the case, I could also line 100 trafficking survivors up and say, how many of you have ever been in public school systems? How many are going to raise their hand? Probably 100, right? Or 99. Does that mean that we can then say the public school system is complicit in human trafficking? Public schools are a gateway to human trafficking? No, it's not. The correlation does not mean that's the cause. Super Bowl increase. Who here has heard this one? Yep, Super Bowl increase. I've worked the last 2 Super Bowls. I can tell you it's not true. There's really very little information to state this. There was a study that was done by University of Arizona, who's out there, McCain Institute, The problem with the McCain Institute study is it's based off indicators that are in ads. You can have 9 of 10 indicators and not actually be a trafficking survivor or victim. One thing I can tell you is that anecdotally, working out Tampa as an example, the only thing I saw an increase in the 6 months leading up to the Super Bowl was the week of the Super Bowl. I didn't realize every time I was there, my hotel was next to a strip club. The strip club was popping Super Bowl weekend. That doesn't mean the increase in trafficking occurred. It means there's a bunch more people there. When you actually break down the data, break down all the ad numbers, break down who's from where, we'll say LA, for instance. You would have girls that were in San Diego, LA, and San Francisco. And this weekend they're posted in LA because it's Super Bowl weekend. So we say, well, they came in. No, this is part of their normal routine, right? This is the normal course of business. In Florida, anybody know what the number one reason the girls said they came to Florida for? Can anybody take a guess? Midst of COVID. Not spring break. Florida's open. We don't have to walk around with masks here. We don't have to do this. We can come here. It's a wide open state. So we were finding people that were there because of COVID, because of lax restrictions. But then what can we say? Well, they're from Connecticut, and they're here Super Bowl weekend. Came for the Super Bowl. Doesn't work like that. You get clowns like this. Here's another question. Next year, Super Bowl's in Phoenix. If we release 6,000 cops like we did in LA and say, go forth and find traffickers, are the trafficking numbers going to increase? Right? If we release 6,000 cops in Phoenix and say, hey, look, heroin is our goal. I want nothing but heroin arrests. Guess what's going to happen at the end of that? Well, Super Bowl is the largest heroin distribution activity in the entire world, right? Like, you can't do that. Flip side, how many of y'all saw the articles out of LA? 500 human trafficking arrests out of the Super Bowl this year. I FOIA'd those numbers. I can tell you what they are. It's about 90% women. So about 90% of all arrests were actually for either trafficking victims or what we would dub consensual sex workers, if we're going to say consensual. Like, that's not trafficking related. So how do our press releases affect trafficking? This guy, Chad. So Chad actually hosted him on LinkedIn. And who here does LinkedIn? So you can see like who viewed your profile, right? It's like somebody from the governor's office of Georgia viewed your profile. Somebody from whatever county Chad's with. And then finally I was like watching, and finally Chad viewed my profile. And I'm like, yes. On this, what he said was, we're all committed to the cause of ending human trafficking, keeping our community safe. 21 people were arrested in this operation targeting human trafficking, right, in Fayette hotels. Of those 21 arrests, can anybody guess how many are women? 21. Chad, come on, man. This ain't cutting it. But what Chad goes on to say is the easiest way for us to investigate these cases is to arrest the women and gain their cooperation against their traffickers. That is far from the case. We'll talk about it more. The advocates and everybody in the room, you're going to get to talk about how screwed up law enforcement is, right? We're going to do it because I'm a cop and I don't like it. Constable here. This guy, he's known for all kinds of weird stuff. Constable investigators arrest suspect for prostitution at Spring Massage Parlor. It's a human trafficking. They tout it as a prostitution/human trafficking arrest. Is prostitution and human trafficking the same? No, it's not. Can I be a prostitute and not be trafficked? Can I be trafficked and not be a prostitute? Yeah, if you're trafficked, you're not a prostitute. You're a rape victim. That's what you are. So looking at it from that lens, no way. This is not interchangeable. These are some of my favorite. 31 victims of human trafficking for sexual exploitation were rescued. How many of y'all see this? It's really big with the U.S. Marshal Service. Marshal Service is like, we went out, we did an anti-human trafficking operation, we rescued 71 children, runaways. Right? See it all the time. There was one recently, Tennessee. One of the recovered runaways took a gun, literally robbed mom for her car, and fled. I don't know how to say this, but that is not an at-risk runaway. That's a felon. When you start pointing guns and robbing people, barring the fact your trafficker is making you do trick rolls, that's a felon on the run. There was another one where they were robbing people. Here's my question when we look at this. Solicitation of prostitution, we could argue that's trafficking related. Commercial sex trafficking, sodomy, narcotics violations. Is a narcotics violation a trafficking related offense? No. Do the two go hand in hand? At times, yeah, of course. But are they interchangeable? Of course not. Felony assault on a peace officer, sex offender registration requirements, none of which have anything to do with human trafficking. But 1 in 6 missing children will likely be a trafficking victim, therefore we need to get out and save them. So you see, we rescued runaways. What are we rescuing runaways from? The answer is oftentimes we don't even know. This police department, they raided, I think this was 5 illicit massage businesses that were networked. Of those, there were 11 arrests. How many arrests were of traffickers? 0. Who went to jail? Girls in the parlor. I've worked these things literally from East Coast to West Coast. I've worked them in Asian countries, worked them in European countries. There's absolutely no difference in illicit massage. It's cut and paste everywhere you go. 5 doors down from here, there's a massage parlor. I already did my research last night. I can tell you that's what's going on down there. Okay, so looking at the multidisciplinary team approach to trafficking from a law enforcement lens, right? Like what from the law enforcement lens is going to make us want to play with you guys, and what is going to make y'all want to play with us, right? We all have to do that. How many of the service providers in here like want to beat your head on a wall sometimes when dealing with cops? Two arms? Me too. Me too. Like, right? I'm like, oh, Jesus, I got to deal with another police department. How many cops in here want to beat your head on a wall and probably slam some bourbon because of the service providers and all the mythical church ladies that are going to come do their voodoo, right? It's like me, I'm not, no. When we first started partnering with an organization there, I'm like, oh, the church lady's back. Tell her I'm not here. I'm not lying. So think about our perception of others, right? Look at, who's the guy on the top left? It's the cop, right? It's the police. He's eating his donut, a little overweight. He's really enjoying that donut, I think, a lot. What about top right? Who is that? Yeah, it's the advocates, right? I know how y'all do it. You get your lavender oil, you sprinkle some on your wrist, smell it, you hug that tree, you get one with nature, right? I'm feeling it. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Bottom left, who's that? It's the lawyer. Who said that? You have brownie points right there. That's the DA's office, right? They're screaming at you about how stupid you are. All you do is eat your donuts all day. And I'm sorry that these ladies, all they do is have their little lavender oil and tree hugging competitions. But we're not dealing with y'all. I can't prosecute this case. Bottom right, who's that? Victim. What makes you say that? That's DFPS, because nobody ever knows where they're at, right? I mean, we're all looking around. Where's Child Protective Services? We don't know. What should this look like? This should look like all of us sitting in a sandbox together. It should be me saying, hey, I put my donut down. Can you put your lavender essential oil down and hand me that shovel? I'm really making a good sandcastle here. Get the cat poop out of it. We're cooking, right? That's what it should look like. Are we doing that? Let's be real. No, we're all oftentimes fighting each other. So what's a multidisciplinary team? Back in the 1980s, Bud Kramer sat around one day and he was like, Bud, I'm thinking this really good thing, man. We're going to have a multidisciplinary team approach. So this actually became a thing in Alabama, in Huntsville, Alabama. I was asked to teach the multidisciplinary team approach in Huntsville, Alabama. And I walked in like, well, this is awkward. You guys created this. Who here has done child abuse investigations? Does the MDT approach to child investigations work? Every time. Why aren't we doing it in human trafficking? Right? We're just, for some reason, not. So who needs to be there? There's all kinds of different demographics that need to be there, all kinds of different organizations that need to be there. What do they bring to the table? DFPS, they respond when they answer their phone. I'm just kidding if anybody's DFPS, I'm just hosing you. They come work in conjunction with law enforcement. That's how it should work. I want to walk up to my interview with a DFPS investigator. I don't want them showing up before me, pissing somebody off, and then by the time I get there, they're like, no, I want a lawyer. And I don't want vice versa. I don't want to beat them upside the head with a phone book, and next thing I know, some DFPS investigator coming in trying to get an interview. They're not going to get it, right? Us, we all know that's what we do. We show up. Oftentimes we blame the DA, and then we leave and go eat our donut. But that's it. Forensic interviewers. Any FIs in here? One? No? Yeah, you got to have forensic interviewers. If you're going to do an operation, you're not going to have somebody around that can interview a 16-year-old kid. We got a problem. At least on standby. For me, though, you're sitting in the briefing. You're eating our pizza, not our donuts, though, because those are our thing. Medical. How many times have you had a trafficking survivor need medical assistance? Damn near everyone, right? Hell, I need medical. We all go get our checkups. Having that on standby, having that available. Our advocacy services, what about them? Who can help you? We like to, as arrogantly as we can in law enforcement, say we're here to save you. We like pull our shirt off, got the whole like S on our chest, we're not doing that. Advocacy groups are. They're the ones that have the ability to take care of people, not us. We only have the ability to do it in jail. DA's office. Sucks. Most DAs are difficult to deal with. We've been pretty blessed, but they've got to be there. They've got to prosecute the case. They've got to be able to say, this is what I want. This is what I need you to do. But they also have to set aside their ego, just as we do as cops, and say, look, I don't know how to do this. Let me find somebody who does. Or, I don't know what this looks like. Educate me on this, which is difficult many times. Mental health. Anybody here had a trafficking survivor who did not experience complex trauma? Right? Like, we got to have mental health services. DA, you want a good, what you would view as a good cooperative victim? You need to get her help, right? We need to get to the point where we can have that. I want to talk a little bit about the ECM model. Basically, the federal government, DOJ, these are the task forces that I get to work with. DOJ said we need enhanced collaborative model. Anybody know why they did that? Why they called it that? Because they're federal government, right? It would be too easy to say we're going to have the MDT model, right? They're like, oh, we got to come up with something. They probably paid a guy $100,000 to sit around and say, what are we going to call this thing? When you see ECM, it's enhanced collaborative model. It's the same thing, multidisciplinary team. That's all it is. We're going to bring everybody together, and everybody's going to come together, and we're going to work human trafficking from the same room, from the same MDT meetings and all that. So what should it look like when we're going? We're all on the right-hand side. We're all driving to the common goal, which clearly here is LA. We're driving to the common goal, and we're doing what while we're doing it? We're staying in our lane. I don't want you to tell me law enforcement tactics. What do you do? Advocacy. Do you want me to come in and be like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do advocacy? No, right? You'll be like, absolutely not, dude. Like, no, you're way out there. Like, you're going to tell me, I don't need you. We're going to stay in our lane. Now, is it okay to buffer over a little bit sometimes and like have a quick communication and conversation? Like, hey, can you talk? Yeah, but stay in our lane. Who's the one on the left? It's the FPS, because nobody knows where the hell they're at. Again, is anybody from, like, don't call internal affairs, please. One more IA complaint, and I'm probably going to be, like, cleaning a ditch somewhere. So think about it. Let's stop, collaborate, and listen. Anybody catch that one? Wah, wah, dad joke. So our human trafficking investigations, they're complex, right? They're not always easy. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're great. But we have to have the ability to respond. We have to have the ability to investigate and prosecute them, and we have to support our victims. And I would argue that supporting our victims is even much more important than even arresting the trafficker. If I can get you help, that's a win. I don't have to have an arrest to have a win. If I can get you away from this knucklehead and we can get you in a better life, that's the gold star right there. We do have to cooperate amongst everybody. So looking at some of the collaboration with NGOs, and I know there are plenty in here. These are just ones that I know and work with closely. Unbound is one. They're global. Their primary office in Waco. They have them all throughout the state of Texas. They have them in Fort Worth, Tarrant County, but then also in many other areas as well. Collective Liberty is one that I work with. They provide analytical support to law enforcement. They can spit out some pretty cool data really quick, graph it, make it look all good so you can take it to the DA and be like, look, it's like painting a picture by numbers, and then it makes sense to the DA. Avery Center for Research, religious organizations. Who here's from a religious organization? All right, okay, a few. What do we got to be careful with that? We're dealing with people who aren't always right with God. And when we walk in with a Bible, trust me, I've seen it, we need to be very well prepared for what's going to happen next. And it could be a very good thing, and it could be a very bad thing. So just understanding your role and working in our religious beliefs later, however that looks, we just have to tread lightly with it. NCMEC. So why do we have to work with NGOs? When we do an operation, I don't interview victims at all, actually. They knock on the door, I'm standing there in a full vest, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, Sheriff's Office? Come on inside. Got any weapons on you? No. I want you to come over here and talk to my friend Susan. Y'all have a good day. And I'm back over on the other side doing my thing. Why? That soft handoff is going to be critical. Super important. Why? Because usually the cops put you in handcuffs the moment you walk in the door. If they do it undercover, they'll have you, oh, come over here, prove to me you're not a cop, show me this, show me that. Boom, we're the police, right? SWAT team comes rushing in, can't even make it up. They all look like a bunch of goons coming in. Whoo, man, like Hannibal Lecter's in there trying to get sex, right? We can't have that. That soft handoff right at the beginning, I guarantee you will lead to increased outcries because it's information overload in a good way. I literally had a girl tell me one time, I'm not believing this shit, you're robbing me. And I was like, I ain't robbing nobody. Like, she's like, no, there's something's not right. Like, and I'm like, no, just go with this lady. Like, I'll go do your thing. Why am I going with her? I'm like, because she's the church lady. Like, Jesus Christ, everybody likes the church lady, right? Look at, she's dressed in, like, nice. But having that handoff is going to lead to much more successful cases. So what are our limits with NGOs? You guys ever go out in the field, the ones that raise their hand? You go out and do operations with law enforcement at that point? No? First thing I always hear, what if I get shot? What if I get shot? Right? What are you talking about? What if you get shot? My tourniquet's there. I'll stop the bleeding. Well, can I wear your vest? Well, then what am I going to wear? Right? I'll put my vest on you and hold me in front of you, like point around. But they do have safety concerns, right? It's a real thing. You know, every trafficking survivor is going to come in and tell you how big and bad her trafficker is. That's a relayed concern. I get it. Buy a 45, it'll stop that problem real quick. But needing information with clients, how often do cops play hide the ball about clients? How often do NGOs play hide the ball with clients? A lot, right? That's why we're chuckling. We have to figure out how to get past that. You know, we have to have that trust built. That takes long-term change. They do have different expertise than you. One thing I always say about trafficking, I just had a court hearing yesterday, and they said, are you an expert in human trafficking? I was like, well, I hate that term. You could maybe view me as an expert in investigations of human trafficking. There's two experts in human trafficking: traffickers, trafficking victims. That's it. Potentially buyers. They're like 2.5. But aside from that, nobody in this room is an expert in human trafficking unless you've been there. We all are, however, experts in our own fields surrounding it. So, you know, understanding I'm not an expert in forensic interviewing. Like, I'm the last guy. I would be sitting there like, what? Like, I'm not designed for that. You are. If I gave you a gun and said, go arrest this guy, would you do it? Oh, see? But having that trust, the vice versa trust, we have to understand that when I give this child to you or this adult to you, by the time we get them back, you know, we're going to have that set standard. Medical. Oh, man, I remember this one girl, 16 years old, on the side of the road. I was literally called every name except for my own. Like, literally every name. If you could say it, and we're not going to say it in this church setting, she said it. There were things, I spent 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. She said things I never even heard. I had to Google it, right? But the moment I said, hey, look, I don't have any questions for you. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know why. I don't need to know anything. Do you need medical assistance? We can take you to a clinic right now. It was like that. That light bulb immediately clicked. Like, went from like tongue lashing me to, what do you mean? I take you to medical. All of these medical needs can be taken care of, whether it be, you know, just the STD, HIV screening, any of the others, the pap smears. How many people here have ever had a toothache? Right? What does it make you want to do? Down a bottle of sleeping pills and a bottle of vodka and call it a night, right? They have dental problems too, like everybody else. You know why? Because there's nothing, we're all human beings. Our mouths hurt. Get somebody to a dentist. Like, those are huge. It's extremely important. Looking at some of our dental or different mental health. Are we going to deal with PTSD? Are we going to deal with complex PTSD? Absolutely. There's no question asked. Like that, we should just walk in knowing that. Depression, the anxiety. We're going to deal with all of those things, all the suicidal thoughts, drug addiction. You know, you just never know what you're going to walk into. Spiritual disruption, especially if we're walking in as a faith-based organization. Again, it's just something to consider. We don't know where they're at in that walk. Translation, huge problem, right? Anybody here got a Mandarin speaker on staff? No. Encourage your law enforcement to go to OU. Go to OU. Go to the Chinese Students Association, right? How many of you want to help anti-trafficking work? Vet them out. Vet them out as confidential informants. The only thing you'll find is they'll say, I want a very Caucasian name. Every single time, that's what they'll tell you. So I've got like a Jill Jones, Jenny Johnson, whatever, that are informants. How much do you pay for a translator? Anybody got an idea, generally? It's about $250 an hour. You take an OU kid and be like, I'm going to pay you $50 an hour cash money. How many of them kids are going to be like, oh, well, I've got to really get to my job at Applebee's, sir? Right? They're going to be speaking some Mandarin for you. So consider that. Why? Is it more warming to sit with somebody who sounds like me, looks like me, talks like me, and we can have a conversation face to face? Or is it more warming to sit on the language line and be like, give me the phone back. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, here. Blah, 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 blah. Put on speakerphone, right? That's not comforting. It's not warming. So considering those little things. Oh, the other one is cultural competency. First time I ever did an illicit massage trafficking case, I was like, man, I am Mr. Victim-centered here. I'm going to show up. I have a translator on staff. I'm having food for these ladies when they get here. And I had boxes full of the Lord's chicken. Anybody here not like Chick-fil-A? All right? The holy water lemonade they got, I had all that ready. Guess what 50-year-old Mandarin Chinese women have never eaten in their entire life? The Lord's chicken and the holy water lemonade, right? They looked at me like I was crazy. But I had somebody who was Chinese that said, hey, look, next time let's do hot tea. Next time let's do noodles. Next time let's do these things. Man, now you got these women coming in and you're speaking and you're feeding. That's a good thing. Survivor-led NGOs. This is always fun, right? I don't know what it is. I can't grasp this, especially on the law enforcement side. For some reason, survivors' voices are really kind of pushed aside many times. Again, who's the only expert in human trafficking? The only two. The ones that are there. And, ma'am, I read what NCMEC had to say. I know, right? Thank you for telling me your perspective, but I've been reading a lot, and I know how to combat human trafficking because I was prior military or whatever they like to play all the time. No, these people know. They know. Take them into I have friends that sit in ops with me. How many times I've been like, girl, I don't know even what this guy's saying, and she's like, give me the phone. And she takes over. Who's the one person that's been luring these Johns for the last 3 years, 4 years? Her. She's an expert in that. I just get lucky, blind dogs find a bone every now and then. News media. Who here partners with news media? You have to. Why? I don't want to say we can control the narrative, but we can help control the narrative. When they call you and they're like, hey, we just saw that 1 in 6 children, like, well, let's tone it down a little bit, News 6. This is what trafficking looks like. Why are you putting this imagery up? This is what it looks like. Being able to reduce sensationalism. 71 runaway children saved in a human trafficking operation. No. Let's tone that down. Why? We all like big numbers, right? Police like big numbers. We're going to stack them up. It's getting the end of the month. Slide this arrest number over to my sergeant. Bless you. I'm going to slide these arrest numbers over. It looks good. If you go out and do a week-long trafficking operation and you have arrested more than 5 people, I can almost tell you it's BS. Almost every time. You cannot have big arrest numbers in anti-trafficking operations. It's not possible. Low numbers are actually big numbers, especially when we look at the substance. Right? When we look at, this is 5 over the course of a week, they're all traffickers, and we were able to provide services to 12 potential victims of human trafficking, versus, look, Chief, we made 17 arrests. I apologize that 12 of them are likely victims of human trafficking, but we're not going to talk about that. They're just prostitutes, and these are just traffickers. You see it all the time. We have to control that. Having them not mention prostitute. I hate that word. I hate saying the word prostitute. It's what people understand. But that gives the impression that somebody is there on their own free will. I just saw one recently. The news article was something about prostitute arrested, pimp arrested also. I'm like, let me have another bourbon. What is this? How is this possible? Not mentioning buyers, not mentioning traffickers. I hate the term buyers. I hate the term Johns. They're sex buyers. That's what they are. They're purchasing sex. My son's name is John. I don't want his name mistaken for that. Call them what they are. Cleaning up the neighborhood. This is actually when you hear quite a bit. Well, the chief gets on. Well, we had a complaint over on Maple and Jones Street, and we went over and cleaned the streets up, got these prostitutes off the street. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Good job. Well, we got to get them off the street. Well, okay. Same thing with Dallas, Harry Hines, right? Oh, they're all walking up and down Harry Hines. We don't know what to do with them. I'll tell you what you do. You stop every car that remotely looks like it's about to, and you put your foot so far up them that they have no other choice but to go to jail or know that they're going to get jacked with every single time they stop. And guess what's going to happen when there's no more cars to stop on Harry Hines? It's going to dry up. That's how that works. Operation Cross Country. I have to confess, there is one task force that I hate more than any in the entire United States. I'm not going to mention them. It's the largest city in Texas. It's down on the East Coast, or on the Gulf Coast. It rhymes with Houston. But they're notorious for this, right? Operation Cross Country nets 75 arrests in prostitution human trafficking case. This is only one slide of their big overall number. Can anybody tell me how many of these are women? Right? You've got one, I think the fourth largest police department. I'll confess, when we got into human trafficking, that's what we did. We looked at Houston. You're Houston, Texas. You've got to be doing it right, right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Failing miserably. I was telling them at lunch, I have a 2-man human trafficking unit. 2-man, me and my partner. In 2020, we had more trafficking arrests than the entire Houston Police Department Vice Unit. How's that possible? It's because we're arresting the right people. And we'll talk even later about how to do that. So some of y'all get to see like all the little back cop stuff that we do. This is, I'm not going to say what police department, but you can read the quotes on here. Again, it was one previously stated on the Gulf Coast. But what happens when we're out here sexually abusing victims in the name of doing undercover? It's a bad day. Undercover's gone. Those days are antiquated. They don't need to be around. There's no reason for it. Internal for law enforcement. We want our trafficking unit, our vice unit. I really don't feel like vice should have anything to do with human trafficking, but I'm not an administrator at many departments. Our phone forensic guys and gals, right? If I can dump your phone in the field right now and hand it right back to you, they're going to give consent, I assure you. Our child abuse investigators, warrant guys, jail investigators. Why would a jail investigator matter? All that jail talk, right? Hey, dude, I need his mail covered, and I need his calls. Because what's he going to do? Hey, they don't know I'm a P. I need you to go down to the K, post up over there. When you get done to the K, I need you to go to the Rock. Well, you just posted up in Killeen, and then you posted in Little Rock. Like, I'm so glad you have fooled me by saying they don't know I'm a P. Like, let's be real. Some of our other tools that we'll use, and this is part of a much bigger training for law enforcement. Spotlight, Shadow Dragon, Track for money, Collective Liberty. Clearview AI. Clearview, I just actually tell you how powerful this is. I can take a picture of I can just take a picture here, take a selfie, and then upload it, and it's going to show me all of y'all's anything on the internet that has ever touched anything. I had a girl in Poland last week, 2 weeks ago, tell me, you won't find me, I'm not on the internet. 47 pictures later, she's like, holy crap. So it's just a really cool tool that we get to play with. Spotlight, what is that? Here's Ashton Kutcher, Man of the Year, partners with the NSA, CIA, whatever it is. Ashton Kutcher's not saving 6,000 kids, to be very clear. But he's like the poster child for Thorn, for Spotlight, which is a tool that we can use. It aggregates sex ads. So it takes all the ads from all the known sites. We'll say Backpage, they still have data for, CityX Guide, even though they're gone. Skip the Games, all of those. I can just type in Lawton. It's going to show me X amount of sex ads just for the city of Lawton. But I can type in phone numbers. It'll show me all that. Tracks finances. Again, I know a lot of this is not pertinent to everybody else in the room other than the cops. But the good thing is now when the cops say we can't do that, what do you get to say? Yes, you can. You just dumb, eating your donut. Tracks financial transactions, right? There's a long story behind it, but the short version is they'll track your finances. So I can dump a phone number in, and it'll tell me where all your money's going. It's that simple. What can I do with that? I can take your phone number with the sex ads, match it with your phone number from what you're sending to Octarius and Donquil Allen, and I automatically have my money laundering, I have my organized crime, I have all the things I need. I now know who your trafficker is. So then we get into like open source. Anybody here know what OSINT is, what it stands for? It's a really tricky way of saying open source intelligence. I don't know why we all have to have something high speed, low drag, right? I'm going to go get on my OSINT. Get on Facebook, fool. Get on Google. Why is that important? What can we learn from open source intelligence? What can I do when I can find out your life on social media? Lots and lots of stuff. So we're going to keep plugging along. I do want to say that there is like sex, drugs, and rock and roll in this because it's human trafficking. I've covered everything I could. I may have missed something. I don't know. I don't think I did. But just know that some of this may be triggering and or it is explicit. Questions so far? Yes, ma'am. PTSD is the, short version. Yeah, that's, I think, an antiquated term, but yeah, PTSD, short version. Anything else? All right, so why do we have to conduct sting operations? Anybody got an idea? Who here works for Duncan PD? Duncan PD. When's the last time somebody showed up and they were like, hey, so I need to file a police report. I'm being human trafficked, and I'm really glad to let you know that my trafficker here dropped me off, told me I can go ahead and fill out a full written statement, and anything else you need my phone, do a dump. Is that happening? But how often? Yeah, exactly. So not often, right? Proactive investigation is what finds these people. We're not going to find them if we're not looking for them. Tyler, Texas, for a long time, notorious for trafficking. We asked, why Tyler? And the girls would tell you, because they don't look for us there. Good money? They don't look for us. Cool. Most victims aren't going to report. We can file criminal charges against traffickers. We can take their assets. Nothing makes me happier than watching a trafficker roll up in a really clean car, especially if I can find the title in the glove box, because guess whose car that's about to be, right? I was driving a Porsche for a while. I had a Porsche SUV, Coach glasses, none of which I paid for. Well, they paid for them. But yeah, taking the money and assets, taking everything they own. My last general order was take everything except for their dirty underwear. We've got the little cat from a massage parlor. I'm telling you, we take everything. My captain told me one day, "Today we're going to take this ladder." Why are we taking a ladder? Well, it's a nice ladder. The hell are we going to do with a ladder? Well, we can convert it to department use. All right, load up the ladder. Like, whatever. But taking all this. So who should be there? Our advocates, for one. They should be in the room with you, point blank. They need to be sitting with you, eating your pizza, but not your donuts. We got to have interviewers there, right? Whether it be law enforcement or non. I could tell you, don't have law enforcement. Don't have your law enforcement victim service coordinator there. Because what are they wearing? A badge, says so-and-so police department, victim services. I'm going to talk to you. You got a badge on just like this guy. Like, come on now. Our translators. If we know we're going into an investigation or an operation or a search warrant, and we have Mandarin speakers, wouldn't it be nice to have some Mandarin speakers with us? I would say so. So again, going back to OU or whatever college you have nearby, people that can provide things that we as law enforcement can't provide. So I want to start talking about what do we do to target trafficking. Why would we get on, as an example right now, Skip the Games, because it's the big one. Why would I get on Skip the Games and start text messaging every phone number I can find saying, "Hey, babe, are you available?" That is throwing rocks in the wind. We don't even know where they're going, what they're doing. So if we can be very targeted in what we're looking for, why would we not want to do that? So just looking, this is off of an ad. What about this ad is of interest to me? Background. What about the background? It's in a hotel room. I can tell you that is our local cable channel, our local weather channel, right? What else? Who's taking that picture? Somebody. Is it another buyer? Could be. Is it another girl working with her? Could be. Is it a trafficker? We got a 33.33333% chance that it's probably a trafficker, right? So at least 1/3 of the time, based off this alone, we're going to be getting there. So now I can say we have one other female, right? These are two obviously different females. In the state of Texas and in most states and federally, the more victims we have, the higher the what? Penalty. So for us right now, if these two or more were promoted alone, it's 5 to 99 or life. That simple. Just if two are promoted alone. So this starts screaming to me, you may want to start looking at this one. So I can run Spotlight. I can run that number like I told you about. So I can say that 512 phone number is associated with 303 individual sex ads. Okay? Those ads are placed over here in Odessa, New Mexico, Austin, and Lubbock. So what does that tell us? We're cruising, right? We've got our own little, not track, but tour generally is what they call it, our own little tour set up. So now I run you through your finances, and I can find that the phone number associated with that is all going back to a dude named Eukedrian Anderson in Lubbock, Texas. So please don't take a picture of this one. That one's BSA. I apologize on this one. There are some things that are actually law enforcement sensitive, so I'll tell you if so. But I can tell you the people that are sending him money. I can tell you where they're sending him money from. So if today you posted in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and tomorrow you wire $1,100 from Albuquerque to DeSoto, Texas, are you probably there in Albuquerque? Right? I can show the Walmart you walked into that you physically handed ID and money over, so I can physically put you there. I can physically put him in Lubbock at a Walmart picking up the money. I mean, you're doing it with ID, super, super easy. I can search the other phone numbers that are affiliated with him. What I can find is that they're also associated with sex ads. They're also associated with the same geographical locations. So they're just turning and rolling, and they're sending the money back. I can punch his phone number in. And on his phone number, I would know that there's no wire transfers, but what I would see is that it's also in the same geographical location, and this person is a suspected juvenile. Why would there not be wire transfers to him if it's a juvenile? Huh? You gotta be 18 to send money. So I can almost tell you right now, before we do anything, what's going on. So I can take his name, Eukedrian Anderson. Now I want to go to my open source. I go to the gram, right? I'm like, hey, everybody's on the gram. He does not have a big footprint on the Instagram. This is literally it. But what of this is of significance? Can anybody guess? A few things? What was that? People he's with. What else? Jersey. What about the Jersey? It's got a name. If I was to Google Estacado High School, anybody got an idea where it would come from? Lubbock, Texas. So we probably got it right, guy. One thing I would also say, especially for the investigators in the room, but then also, I don't know, in case your husband's ever cheating on you, any kind of moniker is pretty much used across the board. So if somebody uses Kiki Mac on Instagram, he's probably going to use it on Facebook. He's probably going to use it on Snapchat. He's probably going to use it on everything else. I can tell you that there was no Eukedrian Anderson on Facebook, but there's a Kiki Mac on Facebook. So it's the same guy. So when we look at this, went to Estacado High School. Anybody know what Mr. AOB stands for? I don't know why traffickers go for AOB. It's pretty common. Arrogant, obnoxious bastard. Tell me why. It's right. I mean, it's true. But that's a pretty common theme that you see. One of the deals on here, you can't see it all, but it says, I never chase a team because my team chases cheddar. Or I never chase a bee, we all know, because my team chases cheddar. And he's got 3-foot emojis. Do those 3 feet emojis matter to me? Why? What would that mean? Could mean 3 girls, right? Do we know that at this point? Could just be that he's got 3 kids. Could mean he's got him and his wife and his girlfriend. Could be all the above, right? We don't know. But when we start looking at his Facebook, we would find that there are, in fact, 3. I guarantee he didn't take that picture and try to send it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or Polaris or anything like that. He's taking a picture of 3 women out walking the truck stop. What you would find through all of his posts is that these are 3 pretty consistent women. What about this picture is important? Anybody guess? Top left. She's handing over money. One of the things that's really interesting is you can start getting their tattoos. So when you find the sex ads, or now because OnlyFans is such a big thing, if you can bypass the paywall on OnlyFans and you start digging, what you would find is video of him getting oral sex, videoing it, and what's sitting here on his arm? Tattoo. Now I know who you are. I know you're posted in the sex ads. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Middle picture, I think that obviously is what it is. I want to talk about nuance. Everybody likes a checklist, right? Cops, checklist. I need my domestic violence checklist. Stop with the checklist. Because what happens is we go, well, 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6 didn't happen, 9 happened. It's not trafficking, you go to jail, you're a prostitute, right? The other thing is, what does this mean? See this picture like that? We don't know. Everything in trafficking is nuance. It is. I'm a pimp. I'm going to pimp different than you're going to pimp, right? We're not going to have the same things. She's going to pimp different than he's going to pimp. They're not going to have the same. My pimping is going to look different than his and yours, and we're all going to have nuance. That's where, looking at this, there's this handout, collecting his money. You start getting into it. What does this mean? So by the time you get to your victim, we should have all of this in the bag. So I can say, hey, I saw 3.5 weeks ago. You want to blow their mind? 3.5 weeks ago, when you were at Biloxi, Mississippi, he had his hand out. What was he doing there? What do you mean 3.5 weeks ago when we were in Biloxi, Mississippi? Right? How long have you been following us? Well, that real answer is like 20 minutes on databases, but the fake answer is like, long enough to know. Long enough to know, right? And then they're like, oh my God, he's got us. It's that little bit of nuance that matters. Looking at this, the middle on the bottom, it's 2 distinctly different females. Unless this human being has 4 arms, 2 of which are white, 2 of which are black, it's 2 females. When we start looking at our penalties, those penalty groups start increasing because we can identify more and more. Now it may be first name unknown, last name unknown. I got Fanulanu number 1, Fanulanu number 2, because I don't know who they are, but I've got them. This bottom right one, you just signed my paycheck, buddy, because I'm going to run that license plate, and I'm going to let y'all in on a little law enforcement secret here, right? I'm going to tell on us all. There are license plate readers all over the country. I can tell, I'm telling you, where you go with your license plate. So when he says, I don't know nothing about nothing, this is the first time I met her, I'm a friend of a friend, Uber driver, whatever I am. Yeah, but how come when she was posted in Albuquerque, New Mexico, your car was parked at a Motel 6 in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Like, we're starting to hammer that down. Like, this doesn't make sense. Clearview, this is the one I told you is like on the internet. We just run his face. He's ugly, but we can find all this. These are all news articles. What we would have found, without having to look too much, is his Kiki Mac. So I would have known just based off of his face. It pulls me back, says, here's his Instagram. It's Kiki Mac. Would have been super, super easy to speed all that up. Some of our automated partnerships, this is one, again, Collective Liberty is one that I work with. I can tell them, here's a phone number I have. They put it in their little boop, it like spits out a report and says, hey, so we have that phone number. It's associated with 400 sex ads, 3 wire transfers. Wire transfers go to this person. This person owns this house. Here's all the information. And they basically graph it out. It'll literally come back in a graph with full reports. The thing I like about the graphs is it's visual. We were in Tampa, Florida, trying to get a case federally indicted for the actual human trafficking statute without a victim. The AUSA was like, I'm not feeling this, till we walked in with a chart. When we walked in with a chart, it felt like we had crayons for him, and he was like coloring it Red Lobster. But when he had it and could actually visualize it, he's like, okay, we're going to indict. All right, cool. So it can go a really long way for the law enforcement especially. We'll kind of push past this. Can you click on that? It should play. This is actually kind of a demo on what they do, if it'll work. No big deal. So we're going to go conduct operations, right? Who here is from the local police department again? I know you were, too. How many officers? How many total? Yeah. 50? Okay. So one of the biggest things is we don't have the manpower. We don't have funding. We can't do this. Anybody know how much it costs to do an anti-trafficking operation targeting traffickers? Take a wild guess. If I was to say we will do a one-day operation, we'll target traffickers. How much money would that cost? How much? 20. What hotel are you renting? Where are you from? There's my IA complaint. Let me just turn it all in. Who are you with in Houston?
No, I'm not. I don't live from.
Okay. In where?
In Lawton.
Okay, Lawton, Oklahoma. I know. I was actually, when I went to Field Artillery School in Lawton, Oklahoma, the pride of the Army. I went rolling in there, pride of the Army. This place? God almighty. We need to work on the Army's pride if that's the case. But we don't have funding, right? I'm at a 50-man department. We don't have the money to throw $10,000 at an operation. Can you do operations Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 during the course of normal business hours? Who said no? Why no? Because that's what? Because I can almost tell you what I would guess I know, and it's going to be the common cop response. You're not police, right?
No, I am.
Okay. Why would you not get anybody Monday through Friday, 8 to 4? Criminals don't operate Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. They do. So let me ask you this. When do men primarily buy sex? Oh, not at night. Absolutely not. That's not to say that they're not buying at night. Monday, lunch break. You go do a lunch break operation, you will make more arrests than you ever will on a weekend. That's 100% fact. Why are they buying sex Monday through Friday, 8 to 4? They're not sitting at home with their wives and kids. They can break away for an hour and go do this. During the day? I don't know. Okay. So think about it like this. If we have an increase of sex buying during the day, when is the best time to be a seller? I assure you, I don't work anything beyond Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 for them unless we get a call. Because the getting is good during the day. The big cop thing, criminals like to come out at night. Right? Criminals do criminal things at night. I'm not saying they don't. When it comes to this, daytime's equally as lucrative. When we look at hotels for cops to rent, what's the first hotel we go to? The cheap ones, right? The nasty ones. Why? Because this is where criminals do criminal things, right? Let me ask you this, and this is how I laugh when agencies ask me to help, and then I get there and they have this plan. If I live in Lawton, Oklahoma, let's say I don't live in. Let's say I live in Waco, Texas, because I don't want to live in Lawton. I'm just kidding. Let's say I live in Waco, Texas, and I'm going to Lawton, Oklahoma for work, and I'm a sex buyer. I'm not staying in a nasty place. Why? Because I have expendable income. I have the income to pay for sex. I'm not staying at a $30 a night hotel. I'm staying at a $200 a night hotel. Unless you're in Lawton, we move to this $60 hotel, right? But no, think about it. Think about that. That makes no sense to say, well, we can only do it at nighttime, and it has to be at a cheap hotel. I'm not saying trafficking doesn't happen at night, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen in cheap hotels. But your getting's going to be good Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, at a decent hotel. Even as a sex buyer, think about this. Say I'm going and I'm driving through Lawton, because Lord knows I don't want to stop. And I'm just kidding. So on my way through Lawton to go to Oklahoma City, I'm like, I think I want to pay for sex somewhere. And I can say, where are you at? And she says, I'm at the Hampton. We're going to get real expensive. Yeah, it's a Hilton property. So I'm at the Hilton, or I'm at the Oyo. Who's stopping at the Oyo versus the Hilton? I'm not. I'm not stopping at this one. They got nasty. Stopping at this one. Think about it, right? We have to look at this reasonably. I did a big study for the city of Houston and looked at where their overtime payments were going versus the amount of arrests versus the amount of sex ads posted and all the other things. They were spending more overtime money after hours, making less arrests, or they were arresting predominantly the women because who's out still, versus if you look at the amount of influx of sex buying texts, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We don't have manpower. Oh, before we get too deep into this, because it's going to get deep. So we don't have manpower. There's 2 of us that work this, okay? We don't have to have a 27-man operation. Anybody know why we have 20-man operations when it comes to anti-trafficking work? Do what? For show. That's exactly what it is. What's the other reason? Well, because that's the way we've always done it, right? Famous last words. I always ask people, when cops, well, it's officer safety. We don't know what's on the other side of the hotel room. I'm like, well, let me ask you this. Local PD, what's the number 1 most dangerous call for law enforcement? Domestic violence. Number 1 most dangerous call. You get dispatched to a DV call. How many officers are going? 2. Maybe 2 and a supervisor. So we'll say 3 people tops. 3 people to the most dangerous call. We know there's violence occurring, and we have to have 27 people. This Yahoo, this knucklehead ain't Hannibal Lecter. Most of them are absolute cowards, just like DV suspects. Most of them are absolute cowards, and the other thing is they think they're so smart that they will look at, I had one look at me one time, I said, hey, can I have consent to search your phone? Yeah, passwords, whatever. Emmanuel Bailey, you are a moron. But he's so used to what? What do traffickers do? They talk their way in and out of everything. So they play that with the cops too. We don't have to have that many people out there. Looking at some of our terms, I'm not going to go over these. I mean, it's pretty obvious what they are. If anybody have any questions, covered is with a condom. But I'm going to walk through why this is all so easy. Some of our emojis, I will caution this. Emojis were much more of a thing and had much more meaning during the Backpage days than they do now. You'll see some that are like the flower. It means that's a minor. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. In this day and age, the flower is actually pretty common within illicit massage business advertisements, and you're never going to find a minor. Let me say never. Very, 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 very few times will you ever find a minor in an illicit massage business. So I want to talk through some of our text. This is we're looking at completely free. Text Now, it's a little burner app. Download it to your phone. You have a fully functioning phone. My personal or my work phone has 4 different numbers assigned to just that alone based off apps. It's free. We don't have to get Callyo. We don't have to spend $10,000 a month. None of that. So on this, I'm on the right-hand side, obviously, and I'm like, hey, babe, because that's what we all do, right? That's how we show our affection. And she calls me love. How are you, love? And at that point, I knew we were going to meet. So I was like, hey, I'm wondering if you're available. She says that she is, and I ask, hey, the donation FSHR, what am I asking her? How much do I pay you to have full sexual intercourse with you for an hour? Right? Like, we know that. It's the coding and all this. It's important, but it doesn't matter. They think it does. So she says 200 roses. I'm not showing up with 200 roses, like literal roses. So I ask her, is the oral sex with a condom without? Her response to me is the oral sex is without a condom. The full sexual intercourse is with a condom. She says that's going to be $250. I ask her, are you available now? She says, yep. And I say, come to 330 Austin Avenue. It's a condo. Number 517, gate code's 14605. So I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret here. To meet the elements of our criminal offense of prostitution, have we met that? Absolutely we have. So we have to have an agreement to engage in a sexual act for a fee or something along those lines. Do we have that? Doesn't have to take place. There are some law enforcement agencies that will tell you, well, I have to start getting oral sex to be able to prove that she was actually going to do it. Wrong. That's sexual assault, for one. Two, nowhere, I'm not making this up. Like, I'm telling you. And my recommendation on all of those is they should be arrested for sexual assault. But we've met that. We're there. So do I have to hand her money? Legally, no. All we have to do is have the agreement. 330 Austin Avenue. It is a condo. It is a condominium. It's a real nice one right downtown. There is no condo 517. There is a gate to try to get in. Gate code 14605. It is not going to let you in. Why do I do this? Because we don't have manpower and funding. I'm not going to go rent a hotel every single day when I can lead you to a gate that's not going to let you in, right? And that's free 50. So when I get them to come up for free 50, and she tells me I'm 20 minutes away, right? And I'm sitting here doing surveillance. So me and my partner are there watching. She says, I'm here. And I watch a car pull in. Car goes to the gate, punches the code. Gate don't open. She says, what? Hey, it won't let me in. Cool, I'm on my way. Anybody know what the FBI calls that car? A clue, right? That car is sitting at the gate that she says she's at. We're watching her try to put the gate code in. That gate ain't opening. She says it ain't opening. Is there any question about who might be in that car, right? So what do? Roll in, traffic stop. It's that simple. We've got our agreement. We now know who you are. It's easy. So you see on here where I said test at the bottom. Why would I do that? Because I've now made contact with her. I have taken her phone. And I'm sending tests for what reason? Make sure it's that phone, right? What happens if it's not? Yeah, if it don't say test, I am one happy camper. Because I'm texting somebody else. And what's about to happen with that phone? It's about to start ringing off the hook, and it's going to say daddy, guaranteed. So it's actually a really good thing. If it says test, it's not a bad thing. But if it doesn't say it, it's a really good thing. So some of our operational practices, like why do we as law enforcement do what we do? It's because that's the way we've always done it, right? Like that's the answer. You have a 100-year-old police chief that's like, well, back when I came into law enforcement, we had wheel guns and rode Shetland ponies across the high desert, right? And then he's like, but I know you need all these like high-speed vests and all this stuff makes you look like Rambo. You're going to come in. We can do that. Like we can adapt to the times with that. But we really need to have an undercover camera and all this other nonsense. So our operational practices. We want to pick our location to be somewhere isolated. I have seen police departments. We have one locally that kind of dabbled in a little bit of trafficking, a little bit of online solicitation. I'm not really sure what they did. It's that police department you have within your county where all the doctors and lawyers live, and they have more money than they know what to do and no crime. So they have like nothing to do with their entire existence except for write speeding tickets for like 4 over at 3 a.m. That was this department. And they would want to meet at Walmart. They make a big spectacle. This big old, all these cop cars, woo, right? Why are we doing this? Kind of what I think you said earlier. It's for the show, right? It's for the attention. Look what we're doing. You don't want that. What happens when things turn sideways and next thing you know you're in a critical incident and people are pumping rounds? It's a bad day. I don't want that at Walmart. I want it on the back of a building. We want to keep them isolated, but we also don't want to be like, well, you're going to go 5 miles down County Road 457, turn right on County Road 352, go about 0.7 miles and stop at the oak tree. When you get there, yell, caw, right? We don't want that. They're going to be like, not today, officer. I'm not going to be doing that. Not today, officer or serial murderer. Like, not happening. So this is what we use. This is actually 330 Austin Avenue. It's right smack downtown. So you're like, but you said isolated. It is isolated. I'll show you why here in a second. But here in the bottom of the L, or in that little corner of the L, is where that gate is. Where they're over there punching 14605, which, by the way, is my badge number. That's why it doesn't let you in. My partner's usually here, and I'm usually there on the bottom. And when they get there, they have now, for the former military and or law enforcement people, what do they call that? What kind of ambush is that? It's literally an L-shaped ambush. You are literally in the middle, and we're coming into you on an L. Everywhere you decide to go is done. So when they're in that corner, if for some reason they decide to punch it, obviously they're going to have to ram through our stuff. This creates a natural wall of vehicles. You have to punch through those vehicles to get through. You're not going to. The flip side is, if you look at the bottom, it's all open parking garage. Why do I like that? I'm going to tell you all a little secret here. Everybody wants to do lion stuff till it's time to do lion stuff. You got some of the most coolest cops you ever see in your life. Got their vest on. They got radio, flashlight, taser, aspeton, handcuff, St. Michael patch, sheepdog patch. Guy looks like he's straight Rambo mixed with like Last Samurai. Got his rifle. And when the getting gets good, what happens? He loses his mind. It's always that guy. So I have them over here like cranking rounds over top of their head. They're like everywhere. I like this because it's not hotels. I don't have somebody shooting rounds into hotels. I have somebody shooting around into hopefully empty cars. So just something to consider tactically for the cops if you ever decide to do this. And for y'all, if for any service providers, be like, hey, tactically this makes no sense, officer. We're going to talk on this. Let me get a chalkboard real quick. I'm going to show you what an L-shaped ambush looks like. Surveillance. Can surveillance do takedown? Think about, just because we were talking at lunch, Fort Worth PD, how many officers they have on their average operation? Probably like most, at least 20. I mean, by the time you get surveillance unit, let's think about this. You got to have your undercover, right, for the cops. You got to have your cover team. So you got 3, 4 guys, gals that are your quick response team. Things get bad. When you scratch the back of your head, that's like the cue you need danger. We have the command. We have the surveillance teams. We have the Pizza Hut team. We have the Pizza Hut cover team to make sure the Pizza Hut team goes and actually gets the pizza and makes it to us safely. We got the donut team just so we can all stare at donuts even though we don't like them, right? We have all these people doing absolutely nothing. 90% of them are sitting around like this, wasting overtime. Your surveillance people can be like, wow, he just pulled in. I think I'll go be the police now. Hey, I'm Officer Smuckatelli. Nice to meet you, right? Like, it's not that difficult. 3 to 4 people's optimum. 50-man department. If y'all said we're going to do a human trafficking operation for 2 days, could y'all spare 4 people at some point? Yeah, of course. Yeah, right. Ask the bean counters. They're going to be like, absolutely not. But yeah, 4 people for 2 days? Come on. Takedowns. Officer safety is priority. Only second to that of potential victims and innocents. Bad guy, he's absolutely last on that continuum. I like doing the whole show me your hands, cover your face, the whole 9 yards. It's really cool for you guys because the first time you get to watch this happen, like Susan, the church lady, was like, oh my God, I've been preparing for this, and I was not prepared for what just happened. She's like, I saw guns everywhere, and I'm like, we're good. You got my vest. We're good. Getting cell phones documented in place, getting all of that follow-up, potential follow-up done there. Being able to, at that point, at that condo, have your service provider a block over. So now when I have that car and I pull them out, I can say, hey, now it's time to come. So now I can hand you off to a service provider within about 2 minutes. That's a really good thing. Getting consent, a lot of this again. For the police in here, abuse at skipthegames.com, you can actually get all the IP address information, phone numbers. For the others, if they say, we don't know where to find this, that's where you find it. Requires an email, no subpoena, no search warrant, no nothing. All you got to do is say, I need any and all information regarding this URL. Done deal. You'll have it next day at the latest. So skip the games. It's kind of funny. I was actually going to be subpoenaed by Backpage as a defense witness. Right? Worst thing they could ever do. Problem was, there was a guy there named Nathan, was their subpoena compliance guy, and I emailed him one time, and I said, Nathan, you guys are phenomenal to work with. Next time I'm up in Dallas, I'm going to reach out. We'll have coffee. So their lawyers called. We found this email from 2015 that you sent Nathan at Backpage. Like, they were great to work with, right? I'm like, absolutely they were. They were wonderful to deal with. Really? Oh, yeah. They're still evil pieces of garbage, like, to be very clear. Yeah, but they work with you. I get it, but they required a subpoena. Skip the Games doesn't require. So, what do you mean? I'm like, If you want me to testify to this email, I'll testify. Nathan was a good dude. You want me to also testify on cross about how horrible you people were? I'm also down for that. I didn't get subpoenaed for the trial. But Skip the Games will hand you whatever you want. They also have a legal disclaimer on Skip the Games. Not even making it up. Somewhere along in their legal is our CEO or founder or whatever believes that 2 adults should be able to engage in consensual sexual intercourse, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're cool with that. Our CEO also believes that human traffickers should be shot on sight. Right? What better way to try to get around FOSTA SESTA than be like, look how cooperative we are with law enforcement. We hate traffickers. We would kill them if we could. So it's a not necessary evil. Follow-up on this one, Finson, Track, those are financial ones. Very powerful tools for the law enforcement that doesn't know what Finson is. We can talk about, because that one's extremely sensitive, we'll talk about that one later. If you have, I can walk you through what that is, but you're not even supposed to cite it. I forgot I'm not at a law enforcement only training. Greyhound. You call Greyhound. Shoot an email to their legal. Hey, I need any and all information. They don't require subpoenas. Super easy. You get what you want. Airfare, all that. Priceline. If you ever have to issue a subpoena to Priceline for the police, it's going to get routed to their subpoena compliance guy. His name is Rocky. Ask Rocky for his address and surprise Rocky with a patch and a coin. You will literally get everything your heart desires from Rocky. He will call you and be like, hey, bro, I know it's outside the subpoena, but they just checked into such and such. Rocky's the dude if you send him a coin. What was that? Hotel history. Think about this, especially for law enforcement. This is not strictly related to human trafficking. I travel probably 2 to 3 weeks a month. I'm gone. So I leave here. I'll go to Denver. So I get on my phone. I go to my Hilton app. I pretty much exclusively use Hilton. I'm like, bam, I'm going to be in this area. I like Embassy Suites. I want that Embassy Suite. Boom, reserve on my phone. Then I'm going to go, okay, cool, it's 24 hours beforehand. Let me check in. Boom. Let me pick my room I want on the far end all the way at the end of the hall. Room 140, whatever. So I get 140, I click it, I check into room 140. They ask me, do you want to do digital key? Yes, I do. Digital key it, I park, I go to the side door, I click in because I don't like dealing with people. I walk through there, I go to my room 140, click in, and I'm in my room. Have I dealt with front desk? Nope. So when we start questioning front desk, hey, did you see this person? They're like, no. Could be that they actually haven't. What else have I done that's significant? I have left a digital footprint like none other, right? So considering search warrants, things like that to your major hotels, whether it be Hilton, Marriott, any of those, it's hard to say I wasn't there when your Bluetooth on your phone is checking you into a side door and then to a room. So just things to consider. So we caught him riding dirty, right? Like, now what? What do we do? At this point, this is where we get all giddy, right? We're like, I finally did this, and I said BBBJFS $400, and she showed up. We're great. What do we do with them? Like, they're here. We start looking at what's in front of us, for one. What's the first thing in front of us, cops? It's going to be the car, right? Whether he dropped her off at ours or whether we went to theirs, it's going to be the car. If it's this car, it's definitely a trafficker. If it's him, he's in federal prison. But he comes rolling up. One thing I will say is this. At the time, this was a new Lexus. There's nothing wrong with cruising through and looking at the vehicles in a parking lot, right? If I have the money to buy a Lexus, why in God's name would I be staying in Motel 6? Let's be real. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. I'd be bless you, Hilton, Marriott, any of the, nice hotels. I'm not going to be at these little janky ones. So when they're saying, hey, come on over to my hotel, I always go early and cruise. I'll look. Well, there's the Lexus. Might want to watch that car. Condoms. Right? I mean, it is what it is. Are condoms usually in people's cars? Yeah. It's not uncommon. We did an operation in Beaumont, Texas here recently where we pulled out a bag and the bag was full of condoms. Here's the deal. You got a little box, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, more power to you, do your thing. You got this, either something very bad is going on or your wife needs to find out about your girlfriends, right? Like it's one of the two. You don't have that many for no reason. So looking at what we have in front of us. Meal receipts. Why would a meal receipt matter? Why do I care that you went to McDonald's? Because you're, where and when, yeah. So you're Emmanuel Bailey. You're 6'1", 112 pounds soaking wet. Did you eat 1 sausage biscuit, 1 milk, 1 sausage and cheese biscuit, 3 pack of cookies, 3 pack of chocolate chip cookies, 1 sausage gravy biscuit, 1 large sweet tea, 1 hash brown, 1 large Powerade? Absolutely not. You're feeding more people than just you. And I know what McDonald's you went to. So what can I do? Cameras, right? Think about McDonald's. I hadn't been to a McDonald's in actually a really long time now that I think about it. But I know the last one I went to, they had the camera right there at the drive-thru, right? Because they're worried about getting robbed. That's on your face. Yeah. So if I have, hey, officer, whoa, so glad you're here. She's what? Bro, I just met her. I'm trying to give her a ride. She asked for a ride, told me she'd pay me $20. I didn't know nothing about this. What the hell are you talking about? Well, when I follow up on it 3 days ago, this person that you just mysteriously met, y'all were at McDonald's together eating all of this food. Like that, man, you're a really nice guy, right? Vanilla Visa, these are still a thing. It was really big during the Backpage days, just prior to Visa and them pulling their ability to pay. But vanillavisa.com, if your kids, spouses, whoever has one of those, if you go to the back, flip it over, it's going to say www.vanillavisa.com or vanillawhatever.com. Click on it, you punch the card number in, click enter. It's completely open source. It pulls right up. All the transaction history. Cops, you can sit on the MDT, punch it right in. Sex ad, sex ad, sex ad, hotel, sex ad, sex ad, sex ad, hotel. FBI calls that a clue, right? Like there's no, I will say, I hate anybody here FBI. They're so useless. Like, useless. Going back to the Super Bowl, we'd have like 2 girls come in, right? And they're like, screw you, blah, 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 blah. FBI nowhere. Put 5 victims that are like, hello, officer, I would like to fully comply and give full written statements about everything. Here they come. Hey, we got a case on over here. What are we doing? Like, that's how useless the FBI is. Trains or bus tickets. Does it matter to me that Kennedy Bivens went from St. Louis, Missouri to Victoria, Texas? Yeah, it matters to me. Why? For one, if we're looking at federal, we've affected interstate commerce, transportation and aid of racketeering enterprises. We got that right out of the chute. Mann Act, easy. I can find out who paid for that ticket. I can find out that Emmanuel Bailey's the one that paid for that ticket. I can find Kennedy's phone number on that ticket. Where can I run that? Through Spotlight from earlier, right? Kennedy didn't have any sex ads associated with her phone number. Guess who does? Emmanuel. So we're able to do some of those things to be able to build out right there sitting on the side of the road. Walkie-talkie. That's literally counter surveillance 101. That's a $10 fix from the dollar store, and he's doing what? He's sitting in the car going, don't answer the door. It's the cops. And what does she say? 10-4, good buddy. Right? Like that's how it works. So here's another thing that I want to point out. And who here knows Rebecca Charleston? Survivor, yeah, real good friend of mine. We were doing a presentation in New Jersey together, and she's like, go back, go back, go back. I'm like, okay, I don't want to go back. So I go back, and she's like, I want to bring up a point. Think about coercion. Think about recruitment. That's a Louis Vuitton handbag. How much that cost, ladies? I don't know. I don't even want to say it's real. I assume it is. How much? Right, more than I would have paid for a purse for my ex-wife. Which is why she's probably my ex-wife. But she said, you got this Louis Vuitton purse, which is nice, right? We get to shoulder it and look at, boom, got my Louis Vuitton, but you're eating off the dollar menu at McDonald's. Never even crossed my mind until she pointed that out. But if you think about it, it makes complete sense. I always do like pointing out, too, they love the Bible. Mama, I'm going to get through this. God got me. God thinks you're an ass. Like, to be clear, you're not getting out of nothing. We talked this morning. Speeding ticket. Oh, I'm finally in Oklahoma. Where in God's name is Kiowa? Kiowa, Oklahoma. Now, y'all don't even know. County of Pittsburgh. Where is this? Nobody has ever told me. Oh, I know where Kiowa is. Okay. I am so let down that y'all are like, that's 27 miles away. Like, all these years I've been like, who's from Oklahoma? Nobody raises like 2 people. I'm like, where? I don't know. Do I care that Emmanuel Bailey got a ticket for liquor law violation and possession of drug paraphernalia in Kiowa, Oklahoma? Why do I care that he got that? Because all I got to do is call Kiowa, Oklahoma Police Department, as we did, and say, hey, you made a traffic stop, this citation number. Can I get a copy of your dash cam? And what happens? Oh, this lady, I just met her, man. I'm just giving her a ride, $20. And the patrol guy's like, I need to run Emmanuel Bailey, date of birth, blah, 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 blah. I need to run, Jacqueline, whatever, I can't remember her last name, Jacqueline Tran, blah, blah. I need to run Ashley Green, date of birth, blah, blah, blah. What are we doing? We're putting you all together. All these times you're like, man, I'm just a nice guy. And we're showing that you're not a nice guy. Coercion, fraud, force. Anybody here? So I'm going to make a confession. We were actually last night, Tiger King. Tiger King came out, COVID hit, Snowmageddon hit. What'd I do? Sat around, I watched those shows, I drank copious amounts of bourbon, ate way too much, and what happened? Right? So then I'm like, I need a diet. Like, I never had to have this much, like, accountability in my diet. Like, hey, I'm only going to eat, I did keto, right? I'm only going to do this and this and this and this. Let me check off everything I'm going to eat. No, this was punishment. So when we actually break through and we start talking, what happened? Well, maybe this day I didn't bring enough home. So what do you do? Well, you can only eat X amount. So she would be marking off as she ate. I've got another one I was going to put in here. I didn't have the time, but it's a handwritten note, literally a handwritten note in his bag, not on this case, in his bag, a handwritten letter explaining that she knows her only job is to make him money and apologizing for forcing him to assault her. Right? Force, fraud, and coercion, right there. We're good. Documenting all their clothes. Sounds trivial. You're just showing you're not just some nice guy that gave a ride. You're some dude that's living on the road with these women. Like, this is not you just being super, super cool. For the cops, I would always say, one thing I love doing, I shouldn't say this. I run a search warrant at your house and you're being a jerk, and I'm like the guy who like grabs your bed and is like, flips it. Be careful with that on this kind of stuff. Don't get too aggressive with what we're dealing with. There's a very strong possibility that on the side of the road you're going to find clothing and other devices that are embarrassing to people, and the last thing you want to do is start stringing that out in front of God and everybody. It will totally take away from every ounce of good that you're trying to do. So just saying, don't take things and start rolling them. Bless you. We found a survivor. Woo! Now what, right? What are we going to do? Anybody know? What are we going to do? We got it right here in passenger seat. Oh! I see that all the time. Girl, we got you. We got all the things you could ever want. You want the Lord's chicken? We got it. You want lemonade? It's flowing. One thing to consider is service providers and NGOs. And I've seen it. You being well-intentioned can come off as very condescending. And the last thing you want to do is give it the old, little girl, come here. Oh my gosh, we've been waiting for you. It's not going to go well at all. So learned helplessness. Who here knows about learned helplessness? There's so many people in the room that are not law enforcement. I figured we have more hands. So for the law enforcement, because we don't generally know about that. We don't talk about emotion and feelings and trauma, right? We don't do that. but we're going to today. So learned helplessness back in 1950s. There was a doctor of whatever doctoring, and he was like, hey, I got this really cool thing I'm going to try to do. I am going to shock dogs, because that'll be cool. So he gets a kennel, electrifies the floor, right? And I'm telling you all this. Who here has seen Drunk History? Right? I'm telling you this in the Drunk History. And then he's like, hey, get the dog. Come here, poo-poo. So he gets the floor, electrifies it, puts the dog, for those that haven't seen it, definitely go home and watch Drunk History. It's amazing. But he puts the dogs in the kennel, and he sounds an alarm, and then what does he do? Shocks the floor, right? So, we got dog yelping, whatever. Over time, the dog learned to be helpless. So the dogs would be like, well, here comes the horn. I guess I'll sit down and just take the shock, because that's what I've learned. So the dog would do that, right? So then over time, once the dog has learned to be helpless, he took a kennel and electrified half of it, and the other half was not electrified. So he put the dogs on the electrified side. He sounded the alarm. So what would the dogs do? Right? Anybody with common sense says you jump to the unelectrified side. No, the dog learned to be helpless. They would lay down and get shocked. They had the ability to go like this, and they didn't take it. Think about domestic violence from our end. How many times do you get DV call after DV call after DV call after DV call to the same person's house? And you're like, girl, we got to do something. Like, something has to give. Like, you're going to die. And they're not asking for help. For anybody who's been on trafficking operations, I mean, and I don't mean it literal, but how long, like, we're like, just come here. Like, if you will just come here, I've got everything you need. Like, it's all here. And they're like, no. Why? It's because of learned helplessness. People like to talk about Stockholm Syndrome in trafficking. I would argue that that's a very, very small fraction versus learned helplessness. So just understanding that. I usually do an exercise at this point, and I'll bring up a big whiteboard, and it's just something to think about, especially in trainings or if you're, whatever. And I'll have all of these dry erase markers. I mean, every color of the rainbow you would want, you'll have it at your expense. And I pick somebody in the room. I try to stay away from females. I have learned that females have much more fortitude than men. I don't know what it is, but you guys are like designed to put up with some BS. I don't know. So I'll bring generally a guy up, and I'm like, draw me a house, right? So a guy he'll get, say, the blue marker. He'll draw a house, he'll draw a square, because we all know what a house looks like since kindergarten. He'll draw his triangle, and I just erase it. And I'm like, hey, I did not want a blue house. Okay, so he'll put down the blue marker, he'll get a black marker, he'll start drawing. Erase again. I did not want a black house. So they'll take red, for instance, they'll draw their square, then they'll draw their roof, and I mark off the roof. I like the red house, I don't want the red roof. What's the next question that comes from his mouth, generally? What color do you want? Because what's going to happen if you do the wrong one? Start all over. So what am I demonstrating at that point? How quick I can make you look to me for guidance. So then from there, I'll ask, do you want trees in the yard? And they'll go, do you want trees? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Do you want big trees or little trees? And they'll be like, I want a big tree. I'm like, cool, draw a big tree. So they draw a big tree. I'm like, do you want chimney? Yeah, I want a chimney. Cool, what color do you want? They're like, what color do you want? And we start making these decisions together, right? And then I tell them when it's said and done, I'm like, cool, just so the whole room knows who the goober was that drew this ugly house, just sign your name on the bottom. Just autograph it so we know it's yours. And they're, right? And everybody claps. Hey, go sit down. What have I done to that person? Think about it criminally. I made them complicit in the drawing of that house. Right? When we look at it from the exterior, whose windows, whose doors, who's this, who's that? What's his or hers in the sense of trafficking. And then when we take it one step further and go, and you're on the hotel, and your name is this, and your name's on the car, and your name is on the ads, and all of these other things is the same as that signature on the bottom that I made you sign. That you did on your own accord. I didn't put a gun to your face. I didn't tell you anything. I just say, sign your house. Right? So think about that, especially when we're investigating, but even when we're interviewing. So this is always a fun one, too. This is one that I really like doing with the cops because I like talking about secrets. So it's funny because I'll be walking around while I'm talking, handing out no index cards to everybody, right? And they're like, oh, thank you. No, don't thank me now. Joke's coming. So everybody's like, we got an index card. Woo. I'm like, okay, we're going to take 5 minutes. I want you to take 5 minutes, think about it, write down the most traumatic, horrific event of your entire life. We're going to read it out loud for everybody in the room. Don't write your name on it, though. Right? Can you imagine the reaction I get in those? From the cops, it's usually this. They got their pen. They're like, oh, we're going to do it. We're going to activity. And then I'm like, right? Or, you get all kinds of reactions. You have people that sit there and say, I don't know anything that's happened to me in my life that's traumatic. Something's happened, I assure you. You may not view it as traumatic. You may not understand it as traumatic. Something has happened. So I'll walk around, collect them, and we read them out loud for everybody, as promised. And we read them out loud, and while I'm going, I can guarantee about a quarter of them are blank every time. You're going to have some that are just, you can tell they're joking around, chumming, trying to be funny, whatever. And then while I'm reading, my grandma died in a house fire. I watched her burn. I throw it to the side. I was in Iraq. I saw an IED blow my friend's legs off. He died. Throw it aside. I did resuscitation on a 2-year-old child who drowned in a shower or in a swimming pool. Child didn't make it. I throw it aside. Just keep going, right? So the purpose of that is multifaceted. For one, it's completely anonymous. We don't know who's doing what. We don't know who's writing what. You could say I was the one that did CPR on the child. I have no idea. But I always ask, did that make you completely comfortable or uncomfortable? Knowing it's going to be read out loud. In overwhelming, people were like, yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. I don't like that feeling. Okay, cool. So then I bring up something else. Did you see how I read that? Did you see how I did not care about your trauma? Right? It doesn't matter to me. I think as a human being it does. But whatever the most traumatic event of your life is, does it have much bearing on how my day is going to go from here? Does the worst thing that's ever happened to me bear on what you're going to walk away from here? Of course not, does it? Can I still be empathetic to it? Can I be sympathetic to it? Of course. So when we're sitting down in, God knows, half the time a hotel room where she just showed up to have paid rape occur, and we sit her on the other bed and we're like, we want to talk to you about all the traumatic things, right? Think about it. That's crazy. So we'll say, well, we're Vice Squad with sensitivity training. Like, we know how to do this. We'll take her back to the office and we'll get Chick-fil-A, right? So they put you in what? The police interview room, right? Very comforting place that is. I can tell you, they're designed to not be comfortable. When I was a homicide investigator, they're designed for you to be in a chair that doesn't move, in a very blank, boring setting, and I'm in a chair that swivels around so I can come over here and I can sit a little bit higher than you. I can touch you on the thigh and be like, come on, man. I know you pulled the trigger, right? Like that emotion, let's get it off our chest. We're in a room designed to be uncomfortable, and we're going to take a trafficking survivor and be like, here, sit down. Tell me about all the things, right? It's crazy. Flip side being, we have to think about our attitudes, especially as law enforcement, but even as service providers, even as forensic interviewers. If I'm sitting here going, nothing but the facts, whoa, you're talking about what happened when you were in 3rd grade. Let's get back on track. What she's telling you actually matters. You know why? Because it matters to her enough to verbalize it. So when we look at law enforcement interviews in particular, we have to understand anything they give us is a gift. They don't have to give you anything. They can tell you to pound sand. They can tell you whatever they want. But if they're actually willing to sit down and talk about it, we have to be able to take that, and we have to be able to take it in a warm way. Flip side for the cops. What are you doing in your interview room? Is it being recorded? Right? So I always ask, who takes notes in their interview? Well, I do. Why? To refresh my memory. Quit taking notes. That's why you got audio and video going, right? If you're scribbling away, right, and trying to keep up, slow down. You're not doing any good. From this one, I'd like to do another exercise. Who here had a hamburger or hot dog for lunch? We'll actually do this one because it's fun. Anybody have a hamburger or hot dog? Okay, then definitely not going to be you. Who wants to volunteer? Okay, stand up. First off, I have to ask this because it got me one time. Has anybody in your family died whilst choking on a hamburger or hot dog? Okay, thank God, because the one time that girl broke out crying, I felt bad. Okay. Do you like hamburgers or hot dogs best? Okay, if you were saying hot dog, I was going to have questions. Because I've only ever had one person say hot dog, and I'm like, that is gross. When was the first time you decided, man, this hamburger, way better than this hot dog?
Probably as a kid.
Okay, probably as a kid. Do you remember about how old?
Grade school.
Grade school, so no real answer there. Do you remember if it was, we're going to go to sensory details, right? Like, do you remember if it was wintertime, summertime, was it hot, cold outside? Do you remember any of that? Or just assuming it was grade school?
I'm assuming it would have been at school.
Okay, gotcha. Those hamburgers we used to get at school were off the chain on Fridays. I don't know what you're talking about.
Cheese on Fridays.
Okay. So, do you like cheese on your hamburger? No cheese. When did you say, hey, look, I'm tired of having this cheddar cheese. I'm not a cheese person.
Probably as a kid.
Probably as a kid? Okay. Do you like ketchup or mustard? Or you like mustard? So when roughly did you say the yellow stuff's better than the red stuff?
Probably older.
Like, okay, ballpark. Now we're getting junior high, high school. You're like, man, I'm tired about this red stuff. I want the yellow stuff. Sticking with this. Do you like lettuce, tomato, onion? Pickles only. Do you remember when you were like, man, pickles and mustard, this is the way to go. This is how a hamburger should be?
Probably
Early 20s. Okay, so now we're getting closer to current. Do you remember on that one, any sensory, was it hot, cold outside? Do you remember if it was a cookout, if it was just at home? No clue. When was the last time you had a hamburger with the mustard and pickles on it?
Probably last week.
Probably last week. Do you remember what day it was?
Would have been at lunchtime, and I went to Brahms.
Okay, so you went to lunchtime at Brahms last week, and you don't remember what day?
And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Can you ballpark? Can you try to give me?
Let's go Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday. We're going to stick with Tuesday. Any particular reason why Tuesday?
Because you told me to pick a day.
Okay. Okay. So goes back to my question. Has anybody in your family ever died choking on a hamburger or hot dog? Have you ever choked on a hamburger to the point where you're like, I'm going to die?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing traumatic about that.
Correct.
Cool, you can have a seat. So we're asking her about something that's not traumatic, right? Hamburger eating is a good old American pastime. If there's anybody here, like I put on my whole thing, the like dad deal made of denim, and I'm out there like flipping burgers, drinking beer, because this is what we do, right? It's a good thing to eat a hamburger. She can't give me an exact when she did a week ago. A week ago. Now consider this. There's no trauma involved in that. Now we want somebody to come in and tell us all their deep secrets and all those traumatic events. And we want them to recall it in a very particular linear manner. I want you to tell me on this date, this is what happened. What do you mean you cannot tell me the first time you got sexually assaulted? How is that possible? Right? It's not possible. I interviewed a guy. I was working a cold case homicide one time. He told me, yeah, I killed this guy, right? I said, okay, cool. What's his name? I don't remember. You knew this guy and you killed him and you don't remember his name? No. So what do I call him? Liar, probably amongst many other things. Years later, fast forward, I get in a shooting. Kill this guy. You know what his name was? I don't know. Can't tell you. I should, but I can't. That guy was not lying to me. Trauma was looking me in the eye, giving me a story, and I was too arrogant, frankly, to believe it. So think about all that trauma, and it's not coming out linear. Now let's take it one step further. We're going to play a game. I'm the police, right? I have a sting operation. Boom, you come into my op, right? We are the most victim-centered, trauma-informed law enforcement agency in all of the state of Oklahoma. And since that happened, I want you to come over here and talk to my friend with said NGO. What is the service provider going to ask? Tell me what happened, right? What happened? We're going to get into it. We may not be that blunt, but we're going to get to the story. Oh, man. Well, since this occurred within the last 96 hours, we can take you and get what? Sane or a safe exam, wherever you call it here. You're going to go get a sane exam. What's the sane nurse going to ask? Tell me what happened, right? We're great. We have housing. We can get you a house. You're going to go to the housing. Somebody's going to walk out with their clipboard at the safe house. They're going to have questions, right? What are those questions going to include? What happened? We say we don't have any other services. Everything's great. Everything's just trucking along. It's going to go to the district attorney's office. DA, the prosecuting DA is going to say, hey, DA investigator, I need you to go find my victim. We need to have an interview with her, right? So they're going to bring her down. They're going to ask what? Tell me what happened. And then if they're really, really good, they're going to say, hey, look, we've got trial coming up. We want you to go to the courthouse with us. We're going to walk through this on a Sunday when nobody's around. So you can get comfortable sitting in this chair. You can know what's coming. We can play this out so you're comfortable. So you're going to sit in the chair. Nobody else is around. Tell me what happened, right? We're going to go through this. We're going to practice it. Trial day comes. What are we going to do? Tell me what happened, right? So 6, 7, 8 times we're going to do this before the day. That's 6, 7, 8 times in front of 6, 7, 8 different people at absolute bare possible minimum. We're going to say it in a room full of judge, jury, bad guy. If your juries are like ours, bad guy's family. 25, 30 people before it's all said and done. And if that hamburger and hot dog starts not being linear, then what do we have? Especially for the defense attorney. She's lying, right? If you're lying, as the prosecutor, I can't put her on the stand. I don't have a case here. She's lying. No, she's not. It's trauma. So tell a story without her. So who can tell that story without her? Who can tell the whole story? Cell phones. Cell phones, it's a gold mine. When we target people, we don't target them. I target their phone. So getting into a little bit of legality here, did you know if we go find a trafficker and we get his phone, all outgoing text messages are not hearsay? So if he says in his text message to her, get out and post up before I beat your whatever, do we have our force and our threats? Yep. Do we have to have her say that this is our force or our threats? Nope. We can paint that story without her. So when we talk about being victim-centered, I argue most often that is not my job. That is not the job of law enforcement at all. It's y'all's job is victim-centered. Y'all are supposed to be trauma-informed, even more than trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive, right? Because you can be informed about something all day, but if you're not sensitive to it, then you're wasting your time. I need to be offender-focused. I need to focus my attention on the bad guy. That's what I need to do. I also have to be trauma-sensitive. So when we come together, those two blend and they mesh, right? That's how we're going to get there. When we do that and we have all this evidence and we can talk about trauma-informed, I don't need you to testify. If you would, that would be icing on the cake, but I don't need it. You don't get much more trauma-sensitive than, or victim-centered, frankly, than that, where they're not having to tell their story. So being able to use a lot of that for these. So going forward, how do we all play in the same sandbox together? Cops, man, we got check egos at the door. I literally have a sign on the outside of my office, check your ego here. Like, they're too big. They're way too big in police work. Again, we're not going to save the world. It's not going to happen. I don't care what you do. We're not rescuing hostages in Mogadishu. Know your NGO. Support what they're doing. When the NGO that you partner with does something good, celebrate the ever-living hell out of that. People like pats on the back. We're not here to do things for pats on the back, but people like to be acknowledged for what they've done. So if they do something, acknowledge it. Investigative practices aren't top secret. Okay, I just literally walked through many of these with you guys. It's not a big top secret thing. When I have a briefing for an operation, we got people in the room. Half of them are the service providers and the NGOs and the people bringing Chick-fil-A and all that other stuff, right? Like, they need to know. One thing, that very early on Marine Corps leadership, I can't expect you to do something without you knowing what you're actually doing. I can't tell you go do this without telling you the purpose behind it. So if you can sit in a briefing and hear the reason behind what's going on, it really changes that game and it makes it easier for you guys and gals to actually do your jobs. Cops, contrary to popular belief, we can't arrest ourselves out of a problem. It's not going to happen. I don't care what anybody says. We're not going to arrest our way out of problems. We've been fighting the war on drugs for how many years, and guess what? It ain't working. We're not going to fight our way out of human trafficking by arrest. It's a good thing to put traffickers in jail, don't get me wrong, but understand that that's not going to be the cure. Take your NGOs to lunch or coffee. Like, I'm telling you. Hey, we got to work together. I want to know when we sit down for work that your name is Susie and you've got a 7-year-old son that's playing t-ball, and you are so freaking proud of that, and humanize you other than this is just somebody I have to work with on operations. I want to know, hey, tell me about your kids. How's everything going? Like, blah, 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 blah. We want to have that environment. NGOs, you don't know everything. I had somebody ask me one time, I wrote a paper for a deal, and one of the edits came back and said, what does a cop know about what's best for somebody? And I literally sent the response back, what do you know about what's best for somebody? And she got into all this wizardry because of her. She asked, how do you know? And I said, because I ask. What is best for you? What is your goal? What are we going to do long-term together? What do you want? Not, well, I have a degree in underwater basket weaving and theatrical arts, and then I decided to, whatever. Like, we don't all have the answer. Support law enforcement, man. Breakfast tacos. You show up for an operation with breakfast tacos, cops they're gonna take you to lunch and coffee. Like, I'm telling you, that is the way to break those barriers down. Confidentiality, you guys have it. I get it. Work with your survivors. There's nothing wrong with trying to get them to a point where they are willing to cooperate with law enforcement. We don't have to have that big. For me, with NGOs, I oftentimes hand them the written statement. Hey, can you get the statement for me? Because they're comfortable sitting with you doing that. It needs to work vice versa. Like, hey, this is my friend Joe. Like, remember I told you he's not going to arrest you. He's not like Houston Vice. Like, you can trust him, right? And you have that warm handoff there. Not even handoff, they need to be there. The other big one, take your cop partners to happy hour. I'm telling you, you will get more accomplished at even like an Applebee's 4 to 6 happy hour. I've never had Applebee's happy hour. You will get more accomplished sitting there having a beer with police than you will a month's worth of trying to show up and talk about how you're going to partner. 1-2 hour stint, I guarantee it, because that's where their heart is in the beer. But no, seriously, consider that. Like, and you don't have to go and drink. They don't have to drink. But having that time, sitting somewhere, just being able to cut up and learn each other is going to take you way, way far. These are contacts. These are definitely more for law enforcement. For the Spotlight tool, that's their website. You can go on there. You can click, request access. For Collective Liberty, they're very easy to partner with. They can spit you out all kind of information. All of these are completely free. I got really spiffy here. There's all my contact information on a QR code. I was on a flight, and I was like, wow, this is cool. So now I'm QR coded. I hope it works. One thing you will also find on the bottom of my QR code when you go to it, I've got Venmo and PayPal. I take tips, only asking for $25 a person before you leave here. No, it was cool. It had all that, so I can, people, you always ask me, what's your, whatever, PayPal or Venmo or whatever. I just made it easy for you. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, feelings, emotions? Anything you want to tackle? Police questions about why we do what we do? No? Okay, yeah, go ahead. We had 2. Yeah. 100. It is a whole different scenario. Yeah, 100% analytics. So the way I tell people to investigate human trafficking in illicit massage is investigate it like dope. Don't take this the wrong way, but think of your people when you're looking at what you're investigating like cocaine, right? And climb that chain. It's super, super easy. The reason IMB trafficking is super easy to uncover, traffickers don't have to hide. We're not getting them. What are you doing? We're doing an operation, $5 down. If they're actually doing whatever, we take them in jail for prostitution. We say we ended human trafficking. We move on. They don't have to hide, so it's super easy. Easiest thing to do, start pulling rent records, water records, all that. Find where the money's going and follow the money. I've only ever had one case of all the ones I've ever worked internationally that was only what we would call prostitution, not organized crime. Only one. She's already either deported or you know, the world we live in now, she's sitting in Flushing, New York. So, yeah. Did,
Although we have a problem here with compound now that is legal marijuana, it's the same people.
yeah.
So they're moving back and forth from the Godfather to the bar.
It's because you can launder your money there real easy. Yeah. You had something, man. The best way to report what? To the police? Oh, this is always a tough question, right? So you get a lot of like, well, the cops aren't listening. The cops can plug your ears. One thing I like to say is persistence pays, right? So if you're not getting the answer you need, go to the sergeant. Sergeant will give you the answer. Go to the lieutenant. Go to the chief. Go to city council. Like eventually, you know, you'll get what you need. It's just making it happen. So, I mean, I would pass it along to yeah, local law enforcement or, yeah, Homeland Security is another great option as well. I feel like I'm about to get tackled. No? Okay, in the wonderful words of law enforcement, I guess for the next 15 minutes, you're free to go.